The cockpit voice recorder sits on the table. Black. Scratched. Standard aviation equipment. Nothing special about it, except for what is inside. Captain David Reynolds places his hand on it like he is touching something sacred. Like it might disappear if he looks away. Like it contains a truth too heavy for this world. He is 39 years old. 15 years as a commercial pilot. 11,000 flight hours. Perfect safety record. And 6 weeks ago, something happened at 41,000 feet that he cannot explain. Something that changed everything he believes. Something that is recorded on this device. Something he needs the world to hear. Oprah looks at this man, this pilot with steady hands and haunted eyes. She sees someone who has carried something alone for too long. Someone who needs to share before it breaks him. Captain Reynolds, she says, you contacted our show with an extraordinary claim. You said you recorded something that defies explanation. Something that has caused you to question everything. Can you tell us what happened? David takes a breath. He looks at the cockpit voice recorder. He looks at Oprah. And he says something that makes 400 people lean forward in their seats. On October 17th, at 41,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, I received a radio transmission that should have been impossible. A voice, speaking to me directly. Knowing things about my life that no one could know. Telling me things about the future that have since come true. He pauses. And at the end of the transmission, the voice identified itself. It said it was my brother. My brother who died in a plane crash 23 years ago. The studio goes completely silent. Oprah's face shifts. Recognition. Understanding. Pain. Because she knows what it means to lose someone. She knows what it means to wonder if they're still out there. She knows what it means to want to hear their voice one more time. David touches the recorder. He's on this device, he says. My brother. Speaking to me from somewhere. And I need the world to hear it. I need to know I'm not crazy. I need someone to believe me. He pushes the recorder toward Oprah. Will you listen? How do we get here? Rewind 23 years. August 14th, 2001. A small Cessna aircraft crashed in the mountains of Colorado. The pilot was a 27-year-old flight instructor named Michael Reynolds. David's older brother. His hero. His reason for becoming a pilot. Michael had been teaching a student. Routine training flight. Something went wrong. The investigation never determined exactly what. Engine failure was suspected. Both occupants were killed. David was 16 years old. He had idolized his brother. He had planned to fly with him someday. He had dreamed of sitting in the cockpit together, sharing the sky. Instead, he stood at a funeral, watching a casket being lowered into the ground, watching his dreams disappear with it. He became a pilot anyway, in Michael's honor. He flew every flight with Michael's wings. The silver wings Michael had earned. The wings David wore pinned to his uniform. For 23 years, he had carried those wings. And the grief that came with them. He had never stopped missing his brother. He had never stopped talking to him. Late at night. In empty cockpits. At 41,000 feet where no one could hear. He would speak to Michael. Tell him about his life. Ask for guidance. Pretend that somewhere, somehow, Michael could hear. He never expected an answer. Until October 17th. When an answer came. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. October 17th had begun like any other flight. Los Angeles to Tokyo. Routine transpacific route. David was the captain. First Officer Sarah Chun was his co-pilot. 247 passengers in the cabin behind them. Everything was normal. Until it was not. They were 4 hours into the flight. Deep over the Pacific. Nowhere near land. Sarah had stepped out to use the restroom. David was alone in the cockpit. That is when the radio crackled. Not the normal frequencies. Something different. Something that should not have been there. A voice. Clear. Familiar. Impossible. Hey, little brother. David froze. His hand stopped mid-motion. His heart stopped mid-beat. Because he knew that voice. He had not heard it in 23 years. But he knew it. Michael? Silence. Then the voice again. I do not have long. There is a lot I need to tell you. So listen carefully. David's training took over. His hand moved to the cockpit voice recorder, making sure it was running, making sure this was being captured. Because he knew this was either real, or he was losing his mind. Either way, he needed proof. The voice spoke for 7 minutes and 43 seconds. David did not interrupt. He barely breathed. He just listened to his dead brother, speaking from somewhere beyond, telling him things no one else could know. I know you blamed yourself, the voice said. After I died, I know you thought if you had been better, faster, smarter, you could have saved me somehow. But it was not your fault. It was never your fault. The engine failed. There was nothing anyone could have done. David's eyes filled with tears. I have watched you, Michael continued. Every flight, every takeoff, every landing. I have been in that cockpit with you. Proud of you. So proud of the pilot you became. The man you became. David could not speak. Mama's going to be okay, Michael said. I know you're worried about her. The surgery next month. It is going to work. She's going to make it. Tell her I said the sunflowers were beautiful. She will understand. David's breath caught. His mother was scheduled for surgery. Heart valve replacement. He had not told anyone about it. Not the crew. Not the passengers. No one on that plane knew. And the sunflowers. His mother had planted sunflowers at Michael's grave. Every year since he died. A private ritual. Something she never talked about publicly. No one could know that. No one alive. Behind the scenes, Oprah made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. She did not question the recording yet. She did not ask for evidence. She simply said, "Play it." David nodded. He pressed the button. The cockpit voice recorder hummed to life. And Michael Reynolds' voice filled the studio. Hey, little brother. The sound was grainy, filtered through aviation equipment, but unmistakable. A voice from the past. A voice from beyond. A voice that should not exist. I do not have long. The recording continued. There is a lot I need to tell you. So listen carefully. The studio was transfixed. I know you blamed yourself. After I died, I know you thought if you had been better, faster, smarter, you could have saved me somehow. David was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. But it was not your fault. It was never your fault. The engine failed. There was nothing anyone could have done. Oprah watched him. She watched the audience. She watched the impossible become audible. I have watched you. Every flight, every takeoff, every landing. I have been in that cockpit with you. Proud of you. So proud of the pilot you became. The man you became. The voice continued. Each revelation landing like a stone in still water. Tell Sarah her father forgives her. She will know what I mean. David looked at Oprah. My co-pilot, he said. Sarah Chun. After the flight, I told her what the recording said. About her father. What did she say? David's voice was hoarse. She broke down, he said. Her father died 2 years ago. They were estranged. She never got to reconcile with him. She has been carrying that guilt ever since. He paused. She never told anyone on the crew. No one knew. There was no way for me to know. And there was certainly no way for a random radio transmission to know. The recording continued. Mama's going to be okay. I know you're worried about her. The surgery next month. It is going to work. She's going to make it. Tell her I said the sunflowers were beautiful. She will understand. Oprah's eyes widened. Did the surgery happen? She asked. David nodded. 2 weeks ago, he said. She came through perfectly. The doctor said it was the smoothest procedure they had ever done. Like something was guiding their hands. And the sunflowers? David smiled through his tears. I told her, he said. I told her Michael said the sunflowers were beautiful. She collapsed. She said no one knew about the sunflowers. Not even my father. It was her private thing with Michael. Her way of keeping him alive. The recording played on. The final minutes. The hardest minutes. Listen to me, David. What I'm about to say is the most important thing. In 3 months, you're going to face a choice. A moment where everything depends on what you decide. Trust your training. Trust your instincts. And trust that I will be there. In the cockpit with you. Guiding your hands. Just like I always have been. The recording crackled. The voice faded. One last sentence. I love you, little brother. Always have. Always will. See you on the other side. But not yet. You have a lot more flying to do first. Then silence. Static. Nothing. The recording ended. This is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Oprah sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of what she had heard pressing down on her. Captain Reynolds, she finally said. You mentioned a choice. Something in 3 months. Has that happened yet? David's face grew serious. It happened 2 weeks ago, he said. The same day as my mother's surgery. What was it? David took a breath. I was flying a different route, he said. Chicago to Denver. Routine flight. Except it was not routine. He paused. 30 minutes into the flight, we hit severe turbulence. The autopilot disengaged. One of our engines showed signs of failure. The exact same type of failure that killed my brother 23 years ago. The audience gasped. I had a choice to make, David continued. The protocol said to divert immediately. To land at the nearest airport. To take no chances. He looked at his hands. But something told me that was wrong, he said. Something told me the nearest airport was not safe. The weather had degraded. The runway conditions were poor. If we landed there, we might not make it. He looked at Oprah. I ignored the protocol, he said. I kept flying. I pushed through to Denver. And when we landed, we discovered the airport I would have diverted to had just experienced a wind shear event. An aircraft that landed there 10 minutes after we would have arrived was destroyed. Everyone on board was killed. The studio was completely silent. If I had followed protocol, David said, if I had made the safe choice, 247 passengers will be dead right now, along with me and my crew. He touched the cockpit voice recorder. My brother told me to trust my instincts, he said. He told me he would be there, guiding my hands. And he was. I felt him. In that cockpit. In that moment. I felt him telling me to keep flying. He wiped his eyes. That is why I am here, he said. That is why I needed to share this. Because whatever happened at 41,000 feet over the Pacific was real. It saved 247 lives. It saved my crew. It saved me. He looked at the audience. And I need the world to know that something exists beyond what we can see. Something watches over us. Something guides us. Something loves us even after death. He picked up the cockpit voice recorder. This is proof, he said. Not scientific proof. Not the kind of proof that can be measured or tested. But proof that feels true. Proof that matters. He held it up. My brother is still flying, he said. Somewhere. And he is still looking out for me. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The recording was analyzed by experts. Audiospezialists. Aviation investigators. Scientists who specialize in unexplained phenomena. They cannot explain it. The voice was not on any known frequency. There was no source they could identify. The recording was not manipulated. It was authentic, and it contained information that could not be explained. Sarah Chun spoke publicly about her experience, about her father, about the message that came through a recording she had not yet heard, about the forgiveness she found in words from a stranger's dead brother. She said it changed her. She said she finally made peace with her father. She said she finally let go of the guilt. David's mother spoke too, about the sunflowers, about the message from her son, about the comfort she found in knowing he was still watching. She is 81 years old now, healthy, thriving. She tends her sunflowers every summer, and she talks to Michael when she plants them, knowing now that he hears. Captain David Reynolds returned to flying. He still wears his brother's wings. But something is different now. The grief is still there, but it is lighter, because he knows. He knows Michael is still in the cockpit with him, still watching, still guiding, still proud. The Michael Reynolds Foundation was established to support families who lose loved ones in aviation accidents. It provides counseling, financial assistance, and community. It has helped over 4,000 families in its first 2 years. 4,000 families who lost someone to the sky. 4,000 families who now know they are not alone. The cockpit voice recorder is now displayed at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Not in the main exhibit hall. In a quiet corner. A small room dedicated to the unexplained. Next to photographs of Michael and David Reynolds. Brothers. Pilots. Connected across the boundary of death. Visitors come from around the world to see it. Some skeptical. Some believing. All wondering. What is on that recording? What happened at 41,000 feet? What exists beyond what we can see? There is one final detail that most people do not know. When David landed in Denver that day, the day the transmission told him about, the day he saved 247 lives, something was waiting for him. At the gate, a maintenance worker, a young man he had never seen before. The worker approached David as he walked off the plane. He said one sentence, "Your brother says good job." Then he walked away. David tried to follow him. He searched the terminal. He asked the airline who the worker was. They had no record of him. No one matching his description worked at that airport. No one had seen him. No one knew who he was. He had simply appeared, delivered a message, and disappeared. David never saw him again. But he knows. He knows Michael was there. Not just in the cockpit. At the gate. Waiting. Proud. Confirming what the recording had promised. I will be there. And he was. He always is. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this. Because there are more transmissions waiting to be heard. More messages waiting to be received. More loved ones waiting to reach through the veil. And somewhere up there, at 41,000 feet, someone is watching over you too. Listen, trust, believe. They are there. In the static between frequencies. In the space between heartbeats. In the silence between words. They are there. And they have never stopped loving you.